I lived in China from 2011 to 2016, and this happened mid-2012. My friend and I decided to visit the coastal city of Qingdao for a weekend. It was only a 3 HR train ride away, and my friend, who was uber rich but also a mess, was personal friends with the owner of the observatory-turned-hostel that we liked to stay at when we visited as groups. But this time, it was just the two of us. After a lovely day, we decided we wanted to hit the bars, but we wanted to stay away from downtown. We get in a taxi. I can speak pretty good Chinese, my friend cannot, and I tell him we want to go to the closest bar. Don't care if it's not popular, just take us wherever you want to go. As a side note, on the way to who knows where, our driver spotted this awesome fruit market, and he paused the meter while we all bought fun fruits. So he takes us to a random bar, and it's definitely a club that wants to be a club but isn't quite clubbing. It's perfect. Totally here for it. We go in, and about 1/4 of the tables. Lots of tables in Chinese clubs instead of open dancing space, ... You just dance in between the tables are full, and the bar is completely open. We take a seat at the bar and order a round of beer, and my friend pulls out a pack of pills. You see, she was an addict and was taking literally 12 Lunesta a day and would take 6 at a time, then start drinking. You could get the generic brand OTC still in China back then. Part of the reason she asked me to go with her is because I always refused to just leave her whenever she got to a state that she couldn't function ... And well, she was paying for the whole trip, and I was both eager to please and eager to party. Well, I was a dumb 20-year-old and decided that I, too, wanted to know what it was like to get high on Lunesta, and asked for a pill. She refused at first, saying I couldn't handle it, but I kept pestering, and she gave me half a pill.
Down the hatch it went.
Suddenly, cut from black, the club is now booming, and there's this big guy in my face, talking to me like we were in the middle of a conversation. And the bartender slides us over to shot glasses, and guy gestures to cheers, so I cheers and drink. Tequila, fade to black, cut from black again, and now there's nobody in the club except for me. Big guy, the staff, and a couple of other stragglers. I'm pretty lucid now. Big guy says he doesn't know where my friend is, but he knows how to get me back to the observatory and says he can give me a ride. I accept and get in the front of his van, and we're driving, and driving, ... and driving. Way longer than what our taxi driver took. So, I said as much, and he just casually says, "Oh no, we're going back to my place. I've got some friends there who really want to meet you." My brain went foo, and I immediately started trying to quietly find a way to escape. Noted the door was unlocked. Good. But we were driving too fast for me to jump out. And it's not like people would see something bad happen and step in to help. That just doesn't happen there. So I'm taking stock of everything I have on me, and it all comes together. I feel my cigarettes. I see a 24 hours convenience store at the upcoming intersection. The light is yellow. The light turned red. As soon as we were slowed enough, I screamed, "I have to buy cigarettes," flung the door open, and ran into the Unimart. I begged the cashiers to please call the police because there's a bad guy after me. Please, please help. But they refuse and start yelling at me to get out of the store. Then big guy walks in, sees me, and starts speed walking towards me. I scream for them to call the police again, and they're yelling to get out, get out. So now I'm running through the store while big guy is chasing me, and I'm knocking over displays in between us and everything. And suddenly the police come in. I sprint over to them and get behind them and point to big guy and say, "He's trying to take me. He's trying to take me." The police were confused at first, but big guy had no explanation. So they put us in separate police cars and took us both to the station. That sat me in the detective's cubicle while they took big guy into a room in the back. The detective asked me my side of the story, who I was, why I was in Qingdao, why I was in China, needed to see my passport, etc. I asked if I could go outside and have a cigarette, and he said no. He left, and I wait and wait and wait. Phone is dead. Cash is gone. Still had my SLR camera though. A couple of hours go by, and eventually the detective comes out and tells me I can go. I asked what about big guy. He said that big guy gave them a fake ID and that they found out he's actually from Hong Kong. He refuses to say why he's in Qingdao when he's supposed to be in another city. Refuses to say where he's currently staying, so they're holding him for more questioning. I told the police that my phone was dead, and I didn't have any money for a taxi. But they told me, oh well, But I eventually was able to find a taxi driver that sympathized with my story and traded me a ride to the hostel for a cigarette. I get to our room and it's locked, ... But I didn't have a key. My friend had the only one. It took literally 10 minutes of banging on the door for my friend to wake up, unlock the door, then go back to bed. Honestly, I was just glad she was safe. I've heard a lot of stories from my grandfather, who was a detective for 27 years of his life, and I grew up listening to the tales of he and his fellow lawmen. As a child, he obviously amended the stories quite a bit to make them age appropriate. But as I grew up, more and more of the true stories came out. The case was a murder. Kidnapping. At least that's what it looked like. And it was me and Olson. I've told you about him. There was a family, the Nebels. There was Benjamin, the husband, Jennifer, the wife, and Katie, their 6-year-old daughter. One of their neighbors had gone out for the paper around 6 a.m. and saw the Nebels' front door wide open. When she went over to see if everything was okay, she saw the wife's body. The neighbor called 911, and eventually we were sent over there. Now, when I say there was no outward signs of a struggle, I mean it. There was no sign whatsoever that anything had happened, well, except for the dead body. But even her body, there were no wounds, no marks of any kind. I'm getting ahead of myself. On our way to the house, it came over the radio that the husband and daughter were unaccounted for. If you were thinking the husband did it, we did too, obviously. Problem was, both the family's cars were still in the garage, so we think they might be on foot. Some officers canvassed the neighborhood and no one had seen them, including 2 neighbors that were on their porches for hours starting in the early morning. No one had heard any kind of commotion coming from their house either. I mentioned the wife's body. She didn't have a hair out of place. She was on her back in the kitchen. About a third of her upper body was under the table. We found out after the autopsy that she just ... died. There was no cause that they could find. Didn't been a perfectly healthy woman, didn't smoke, didn't drink, ate right, exercised. It was like she'd just blinked her eyes and gone from alive to dead. Anyways, we searched the house. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb, basement to attic, found nothing. No evidence of a struggle, no weapon, nothing. So we left. We'd spent hours in that house, thought maybe we should come back in a day or two with some fresh eyes. We went over to where Benjamin worked. He was a supervisor at a lumber yard. According to his coworkers, he'd shown up at work that morning just before 5 a.m. When he got in, he worked on this narrow crate. Thing he was building in his office, something he'd told his coworkers was a project for his house. According to the other morning supervisor, he'd only built about half of the thing. Around 6:15, he said he was running to the bathroom, and that was the last anyone saw him. They never saw him leave. While we were at the lumber yard, I realized I'd left my notes at the house. We drove back over there, and we got there while they were taking the wife's body away. As soon as we walked in, the stench hit us like a bus. It was what a newly discovered but long dead body smells like. We knew it obviously couldn't have been the wife. We asked a few of the officers and forensics folks that were still at the house what the smell was. And they told us that it had only started a few minutes before we'd gotten back there. I'm not exaggerating when I say the smell was everywhere in the house. I've smelled some dead ones before, but this smelled like every wall in the place was lined with corpses. Pretty quickly, we found that the smell was strongest leading up to the attic. Now, I told you before we checked the attic. I checked it myself probably 5 times. But we went back up, me and Olson. I was up the little pull-down ladder first, and when I poked my head up, I saw something. I saw a piece of wood like a box. A crate. It was shaped kind of like a rifle case. Maybe 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, maybe 6 inches deep, rectangular. It was standing straight up, and there was blood leaking from it. I called the photographers and all the people in there. They all do their thing, and finally they pull out all the nails and open the box. Out falls the husband. Think about that. This guy was maybe 5 feet 10, 140 pounds, and he was put in a 3 foot by 2 foot by 6 inch crate. His bones were just a mess. His insides, all his organs, they were flattened. They were just ... wet, squishy pieces of fabric. Almost. He was stuffed in there like... I don't know what like. He was just a rectangle of blood, skin, and ... parts. His skin had the discoloration of a body that had been dead for about 2 weeks. Which obviously didn't make sense since they'd seen him at work that morning. He was also missing his eyeballs. We were standing there trying to rationalize the whole situation when something caught everyone's ears at the same time. Little girl's voice calling out for help. What followed was a sequence of all the people in the attic, and the rest of the house, and the people out on the lawn. And the few people that were standing on the other side of the yellow tape, all saying some variation of the phrase, "It sounds like an S coming from over there." Problem was, every single person swore they heard it coming from a different direction. Me, I heard it from right above me, no kidding. The first time I heard that little voice say, "Help me," I looked straight up, right up to the rafters. Of course, she wasn't there. It was just my brain's response to where it perceived her voices coming from. We had to listen to every one of these people tell us where they thought they heard her voice coming from. People swore up and down they heard it coming from the kitchen cabinets, the bedroom closets, the refrigerator, the tank behind the toilet, for God's sake. People on the street said they heard it from underneath cars, behind trees, on the sides of the houses next to the Nebbles. Everyone heard her voice for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes tops, and then it just stopped. About 2 weeks after that day, the wife's sister had a funeral for Jennifer. It went fine, they buried her, all that. The husband's remains were cremated not long after that, and put on display in a different part of the cemetery. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point, over the few weeks after he was cremated, someone stole his urn. It was missing for about 6 months, and then one day we get a call. Find out a groundskeeper at the cemetery had called in. The wife had been dug up and posed like she was leaning against the grave, just relaxing. She had the urn in her hands, but it was wrapped in skin. Well, they tested it, and it was the husband's skin. They'd pretty well reconstructed the man after he poured out the crate, and he hadn't been missing any skin. And remember I told you his skin was discolored? Well, this skin was perfectly preserved and inside the urn. With his ashes, there were 3 eyeballs. Only one of them was the husband's. It's been what, 22 years? I still hear that girl's voice calling out sometimes. And I don't mean my memory or mind is playing tricks on me. Ask your grandmother. She's heard her. The same 6-year-old voice. And then, I remember it was May 12th, 2007. I was going to pick up a pizza for us. I saw that girl. I saw Katie Nebel. I don't mean I saw her grown up. I don't mean I saw a little girl that looked like her when she was young. I mean, I saw that fucking kid. She was standing outside the Walgreens right by our old house, crying. I pulled over and got out of the car, and I started to walk up to her. I can't explain how I felt in that moment. I was nauseous. I was so afraid, terrified, more than I've ever been. She looked right at me and said in that same voice, "Help me, please." I don't know what the hell happened, but she just disappeared. I never took my eyes off her. She was just there 1 second, gone the next. I thought I was losing my mind. I was seriously worried about my mental health. But then, about an hour after I got back home, the phone rang. It was Olson. Hadn't talked to the son of a bitch in 5 years, and he called me that night. Said he saw Katie Nebel sitting on a bus stop bench, crying. He lived on the other side of the country, killed himself the next day. My grandpa took a deep breath after that. There's never a good ending to these stories, I know. If there was, they wouldn't be the impossible ones. I'd have figured them out one way or the other. And I know I've told you some others, but that girl's voice still wakes me up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I hear it from downstairs, sometimes from the bathroom. Back before me and Olson were partners, I was with this guy, Manthe. He was a weird son of a bitch, but he was good at the job. He'd been on about a decade longer than me, and he taught me quite a bit, as a matter of fact. He's the one that told me there would be times when I wouldn't be able to solve the case. He said it wouldn't be because of me, or a lack of skill, or anything like that. Wouldn't be the evidence, wouldn't be the witnesses. He said there'd be times when... How'd he put it? You'd have all the pieces of the puzzle. You know what the puzzle should look like. But for a reason you don't know and can't understand, they just won't fit. Back in the late 80s, we drew a suspected homicide at this apartment building. Real pile of shit. Neighbors had complained about a smell coming from one of the units, so some officers went to check it out. Ends up we get called. The girl was found wrapped completely in dental floss. I mean, each of her fingers and toes were individually wrapped, as were each of her limbs and her torso and her ears and the rest of her head, and then another layer went over everything. It was wrapped so none of her skin was visible. Can you imagine that? How long that must have taken. There were no weave patterns either. They just wrapped it around once, then continued with each new wraparound touching the one before it. How much floss you think that took? Hundreds of rolls, if not more? Thousands, maybe? Never seen anything like it but that one time. Anyways, they identified the girl. She was some kid. 17 years old she was, from a couple states over. If I remember right, her name was... what was it, Kelly? That's it. Now, the guy who lived in the apartment had indeed been seen around the building for a few days. We talked to the neighbors, people that lived on the same floor, a few others maybe. Apparently, this guy, his name was Lucas. He kept to himself. Anyways, we had our suspect, this Lucas guy. We started digging, looking for associates, places he spent time, things like that. Pretty soon we find out he did some off-the-books work at a landscaping company. Guy there tells us he hasn't been to work in 3 days and that he figured he'd quit. We pulled a few more threads, but nothing seemed to pan out. It looked like this guy killed Kelly and then went off the grid. In about a week and a half after we got the case, we de-put Lucas's picture everywhere. If I'm not mistaken, the higher-ups told us all to tell everyone it was for a robbery. We started getting calls from different businesses saying Lucas had come in, stopped for gas, got a burger at McDonald's, picked up shampoo at a grocery store. All these menial tasks, probably 15 different things. Problem was, he apparently did all these things at locations that spanned the whole city, and he did them all at the same damn time. 10:48 a.m., something like that. All the security camera footage matched up. His credit card records matched up. All the purchases happened at the exact same time. And I'll be damned if it wasn't him at the locations. Not lookalikes, but him. Now, a lot of this stuff I'm telling you, it's weird, yeah? When it all happened, that's really all it was. It was just ... weird, odd. It was never really all that scary. Some things were, of course, but generally it was just stuff that boggled the mind. When we watched those security tapes, though, it's hard to explain it. Me, Manthe, and anyone who was in the room at the times we watched these tapes, every time I think there was 11 places we had to watch the tapes, and every time he'd stand for a few seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, and he would just stare at the camera, stone-faced, and it was like he was looking into my soul. I can only describe how it felt for me, but I know for a fact the others felt the same way. It felt like someone was squeezing their fist around my heart. The breath left me. I started sweating. It was the worst fear. ... terror. 2 of the security guys had to leave the room. One started hyperventilating. Another threw up. It only lasted as long as he was looking straight at the camera. When he'd look away, everyone would breathe a sigh of relief. It was ... anyways. Manthe, he came to me the last day of us going over the security cameras, and he told me he had something. Son of a bitch had gone over the pictures from the apartment of all the magazine letters, and he found a pattern. There were certain letters that were written in a particular font. He put those through a cipher, ... what did he call it? Case Caesarean shift. If you moved the letters around, I don't remember how many, 4, 5, something, it made a name that kept repeating. It was the longest of long shots, but we started looking into Bruce Hiller. Turns out Bruce Hiller has another apartment over in town near our own. We talked to the people there. They tell us he's the nicest guy in the world. They don't see him much, but whenever they do, he's polite, conversational, real good guy. His apartment is ... immaculate. I mean, it looked like he went over the entire place with a cute tip every day. Every hour. The building itself was... it was decent, kind of run down, but his place, for what it was spotless. We go though everything, and pretty soon it's time to go check the basement storage unit. The way they were set up was they were just partitioned off with little wooden and wire doors. You could see into everything. In Lucas or Bruce's, whatever his damn name was, in his it was packed floor to ceiling with stuff on either side of the door. But we could see through the door. And there he was towards the back of the unit with his back to us, reaching up onto a shelf. We could barely see him, just kind of make out his silhouette. The only lights down there were single bulbs hanging from the ceiling with pull strings. We shine our lights in his unit, pull our weapons, tell him to turn around slowly and keep his hands up. He doesn't move, just stays there, reaching up on the shelf. We move forward a bit, keep telling him to turn around, show us his hands, blah blah blah, but he doesn't move an inch. The building manager had a rapport with him apparently, so we get him, and he tries pleading with him to turn around. But Lucas just kept standing there with his arm up and his back to us. Manager unlocks the door. We get him out of there. Now, this was a year or two before tasers really started catching on, so we didn't have that option. We inch our way towards the guy, and as we get closer, it becomes clear that ... When I say he's not moving, I mean he's not moving. That he's standing as still as a statue. Pretty soon we realize he's not breathing. We kept our weapons up, kept our lights on him, kept yelling all that shit. Did it by the book, but we got up to him and confirmed that wasn't breathing. We call in the troops. When it was time to move the body, they had to tip him. It was like rigor mortis had set in while he was reaching up to the shelf. What his face, though? It was the most anguished, terrified look I'd ever seen. Picture yourself screaming at the top of your lungs and think about what your face looks like when you do that. That was his face. We asked the people who lived above his storage unit if they'd heard anything. Of course they hadn't. When Manthe saw the guy, it did something to him. I mean, I saw Luca's face. It scared the Christ out of me. No two ways about it. Gave me that same feeling as when we watched the security tapes. But Manthe... The guy never said another word. Ever. Never spoke to me. His wife, his kids, never said another word, as far as I know. Last I heard, he was living in an old folks' home. Poor son of a bitch just looks out the window all day. That was some years ago, though. I hope for his sake he's dead. Terrible as it sounds. They did an autopsy, and, well, it was something with his heart, blood pressure, something. But what it came down to was that he was literally scared to death. I didn't think it was real, but they assured us it was the only explanation. That was it. He died. We never found anything else on his connection to the girl. Why he had an alias. Why he had a second apartment. Nothing. Yeah. We did find what the tip of his finger was touching when he was reaching up on that shelf, though. There was a ball of dental floss, maybe the size of, I don't know, a racquetball, you know, one of those bouncy blue ones. Got a call a day or two later. They told us that inside that ball of floss, 7 human teeth. As far as I know, none of them have ever been identified. It was 1993, I think. You know, after a while these things start to blend together. Dates, some names. And I'm an old man now. That doesn't help. But I remember the important things. I don't know if it's that I just have a good memory, or if these things were just burnt into my mind. Oh well, no matter. We drew a body in a department store, Kohl's department store. You know, the one right up there on North Avenue? Well, this one started off weird right off the bat. Someone placed the call for the body at about 2 in the afternoon. This is a department store that opened at 9 in the morning, 8, whenever, but it had been open. People walking around the place for hours. So we think, okay, maybe the body was hidden somewhere in the building. Nope, the body was right inside the main entrance of the place, right by the first checkout. Someone must have dropped the body there and took off, right? These are all things we're thinking on the drive over. The body was posed. There was no way someone had been in a rush when they did it, and there's no way that people just didn't notice someone doing it. It would have been impossible to miss. Did I mention it was a kid? Yeah, he was maybe 10, 11 years old, the pose was. Remember we watched The Exorcist? When the girl comes down the stairs bent over backward, walking on her hands and feet, that's how this boy was. But, you know, not moving. His back was arched, stomach facing up, just looking up at us upside down. His face, just ... pain. Just pure pain.
Ow.
All he had on was a pair of white briefs, this kid. God, my grandpa was visibly distraught. So, we get there, and the first thing we ask is, well, what did the guy look like? Someone had to have seen him, but no one could recall seeing anything. Not even the lady who'd been standing at the register that this poor kid was posed in front of, not 10 feet away. Now it's weird enough, you know, the way this body is positioned. Position is weird enough, so we think rigor must have set in. The forensics folks get over there. They take the pictures, all that. Then, Christ. Then they, you know, they get ready to lay the body out, take a closer look at him, and ... And as soon as the forensics guy, Benny, I remember his name was, as soon as Benny lays a finger on him, and I mean the moment ... the second. It's the microsecond. The exact instance his finger touches this kid's shoulder, the body just instantly crumples, like a deflated balloon. I feel bad saying it, that poor kid, but it was just a puddle of a person, a puddle of skin. You find out later that this kid's bones, they ... they were dust. I don't mean that figuratively either. His bones were ground to just a fine, fine powder. The only mark on his body was a handprint around his neck, and the cause of death was determined to be strangulation. Christ, ... He was a goddamn kid. So anyways, we had our work cut out for us. This was a case where there were 40, 50, 60 witnesses. We checked the security cameras, and it was the most bizarre, surreal thing. The whole thing was caught on tape. At about 10:30 that morning, a person wearing all black, who kept his head down the whole time so we couldn't see his face, came in holding the kid's hand. They went over to where the body was found, and the kid gets into the position we found him in. The guy then chokes the kid for about 40 seconds, killing him. People are just walking on by, walking around them, looking at them, but ignoring what's happened. The lady at the counter looked over a few times, didn't do a thing, just kept checking people out, doing her job. The guy finishes choking the kid, stands up, and the son of a bitch bows. And the part that really got me, people in the store gave him a round of applause, and he just ... left. We were fuming. I remember I yelled at some of the employees and people that were in the store when we got there. What the hell were you doing just standing there? What the hell's the matter with you, you sons of bitches, you know? But not a one of them couldn't really explain their reaction to what had happened. They said they remembered seeing the guy, the kid, all of it. But when it was happening, it didn't feel like anything wrong was going on. They said they all saw it, but instead of being like, what the hell, it just seemed like a normal thing. We asked everyone what the guy had looked like, and they were all 100% sure in the descriptions they gave of the guy's face. By what the witnesses gave us, the guy was either white, black, Hispanic, or Asian. With brown, black, blonde, red, or gray hair, blue, green, or brown eyes, perfectly smooth or extremely wrinkled skin, big or a small nose, and he had a picture-perfect set of pearly whites. Or he had a mouth that looked like he ate nothing but junk food and rocks and Hadan tea brushed a day in his life. It didn't make any sense. And with everyone having no real idea what they saw, none of what they gave us was a help at all. Remember I said the body was called in around 2 in the afternoon? And yeah, that means people were coming in and just ignoring, not realizing. I don't know. Whatever the hell was happening, but no one did anything about the body for almost 4 hours. We went to listen to the 911 call, and we find out it came from the payphone right across the street from the Kohl's. At the McDonald's there used to be a payphone. I heard a gravelly, deep voice, but Olson, he heard someone more high-pitched. Doesn't really matter, just another weird thing about this. Operator goes 911, yada yada yada. Guy says, did anyone call yet? Operator goes, I'm sorry, did anyone call about the body yet?
What body?
Guy gets all frustrated, starts huffing and puffing, goes, there's a body at Kohl's, North Avenue. Do your fucking job, your goddamn job, whatever he said. Then he goes, I don't have all day. We end up looking at the security tapes formed the McDonald's there, and right after the guy did what he did. To the boy, he walked over to the McDonald's and sat at one of the tables outside, and he just sat there, staring at the Kohl's, just waiting. Didn't T budge an inch from about 10:35 until he called around 2. Just sat there like a statue, staring. Then he got up and made the call. After he hung up, he stood at the payphone, not moving, watching the Kohl's from there. Watched the black and whites show up, watched us show up. Then finally around 4, he just ... left. Took off down the street. This was one where we didn't really find anything. Never found out who the boy was. No one ever reported him missing. Certainly never found the guy that killed him. Get this though. A whole mess of people that were in the store when he did what he did, they ended up killing themselves. 6 or 7 of them in the months immediately following that day. Then, I found out when the case was reopened. Guy who took it over, young guy named Smith. He went to re-interview some of the witnesses, and 16 more had committed suicide. Guy didn't just kill the boy. Whatever he did, whatever he was, he took a whole lot more people with him. That boy, though, I'll never get that sight out of my eyes. The way he was posed, I just ... I thank God I never saw anything like that again. Some of the other cases might have affected me more overall, but that was a sight that ... That was the one.